Hey, welcome back to Psychotropic Release. I'm Mckenna and I'm with my friend Amber today, and we're going to talk all about ayahuasca and her experiences with ayahuasca. So thank you so much for coming, Amber.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
So, Amber, you've done like 40 different ayahuasca ceremonies.
Yeah, I've done quite a few. I haven't really kept track, to be honest.
40? About 40.
Yeah, it could be around
When
there.
was the first time you did ayahuasca?
The first time I did ayahuasca was in the end of 2019, December 2019. Yeah, I went with my whole family, and then we kind of went again after that, and then it's kind of accumulated after that.
40 ayahuasca ceremonies in 3 years is a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a lot. I've only done 6 in 2 years.
It was a lot, but I was also working as a facilitator, so I think that's why I was consuming quite a bit in such a short amount of time. But I've definitely had time to like integrate my experiences, and also like taken a year or almost a year break without drinking medicine, which was also nice as well.
So I started drinking ayahuasca to deal with anxiety and depression because I've told you, we've talked about this in private. Like, I got to a place where it was so bad and I felt like it wasn't easing up. And so it was kind of like my almost final attempt of trying to work through things. Like, was there any particular reason why you did ayahuasca, or?
Yeah, well, yeah. No, it's actually, I'm just laughing because of the way I myself got into ayahuasca was through my brother, and at that own time I was going through like my own personal issues in my own life and didn't really tell anyone about it. And, my brother was going through his own things as well, and he kind of just said, because I grew up in Costa Rica for middle school and high school, and then, he just basically told us this December break or winter break, we're going to go as a family and drink ayahuasca. And so it was just kind of divine timing how everything worked. And I didn't even know what ayahuasca was. I was just okay. When he basically told us we're going to go do this psychedelic with the family, with my mom, my dad, I was yeah, right. And then, and then through that, I kind of, I just started opening up about my own healing that needed to be done. So, but when I first heard about it and went to go drink, I didn't really feel that I didn't feel oh yeah, this is what I need to do. It was just kind of my brother was we're gonna go do this as a family, and then it kind of just unfolded from there.
Oh my gosh, so where did you go the first time?
The first time we went to Rythmia.
You went to Rythmia, which is so funny because then you started working at Rythmia.
So that was the first time we went as a family. And then after that, we went 2 times as a guest. And then the opportunity presented itself to work there as a facilitator and do other things there. So, just kind of took the opportunity. And then, life kind of just went from there.
Do you want to talk a little bit about, the first few times you did ayahuasca? Because when you go to Rythmia, you do 4 ceremonies in 4 nights.
Yeah.
So how was that whole experience?
Well, the first night was actually really beautiful. I had no expectations, which I think is really beautiful, because just in general in life, when you go with any expectation, leads to disappointment. But I remember I sat there with my intention, and I just couldn't put my notebook and everything away, and I literally just after I received my first cup of medicine, I laid down in my bed and I said, okay, I'm ready, just take me. And honestly, it was really beautiful. It's the first time I talked to my soul and my higher self, and we talked about forgiveness and inner strength, and that was really relatable to the things that I needed, my own traumas that I needed to work on. And then I would say the next 3 ceremonies were a bit rough because I wasn't surrendering. A lot of things wanted to come up and be shown to me, but I wasn't ready, so I was resisting and fighting a lot. So I'd say my first time, honestly, at Rythmia, I didn't get a lot out of it. I mean, of course, I went back home and things were changing in my life naturally and synchronicities, but I guess at that point in my life, I wasn't just really ready to face and let go of the experiences or the traumas that I needed to let go in that time. So I'd say my second time at Rythmia, I completely surrendered and trusted the medicine and what it wanted to, and that's where I kind of felt like I really started to do a lot of like deep healing.
Yeah, so that's really interesting because I feel like the first time I went to Rythmia too, or the first and only time I've been to Rythmia, I had like such a hard time surrendering as well. And there was so much build up to the experience. Like I felt like I was ready and I wanted to do it, but I felt also like so much was holding me back. Too. Yeah, and it was so hard to surrender. Like they say surrender to the medicine, and it seems like okay, like sure. And then when it comes down to actually drinking it, especially the first few ceremonies, you're like, oh, this is actually happening.
Yeah, like this is intense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's scary. It can be scary, you know. It's really easy to say one thing but then do another thing, and especially when you're receiving such a potent medicine and one of like the strongest psychedelics really like in the world, it can be honestly scary, and a lot of fear can come up. And I think that's just like in general in life where we're surrounded by so much fear, and even the experiences and the traumas that we hold on to, it can be hard to face. And I think, you know, that comes just to trusting, not only trusting in yourself that in this experience you'll be okay, but even like the medicine, it's so divine. It's been used for like thousands of years by like shamans in the Amazon and stuff. So I think it's all about surrendering and just trusting and, you know, being able to like go through it, because the only way to let go of anything is to go through. You can't go around it in order to be released. But I totally resonate with what you're saying, because the first time I was like, okay, after my first night went really well, and then the second night went I felt like it gave me the medicine like gave me like a really warm and like hug and embracing me, like preparing me for the next journeys, because it was going to be tough. But when the moment came and like it just felt very uncomfortable, and I was just not ready. But
So how much time between like the first time you went to Rythmia and the second time? How much time was in between?
I would say probably about 9 months.
Okay, so like a fair amount of time.
Yeah, or almost a year, probably, actually almost a year. But before that, I went back for the second time in November. I had gone to like a yoga retreat to get a certification in Ashtanga yoga, and it was integrated with plant medicine. So we did ayahuasca, wachuma, bufo, and Kambo. It was very intense, all in 1 month. And I remember even in the last week of my training, I had because like, you know, our body stores information. And I remember like I had so much pain being released through my chest and my back that I couldn't even lift my arm up. So like I couldn't even finish like the last week of my yoga certification. But it was all in that moment. I was like, oh my gosh, what is going on? At that time, I didn't realize it was just trauma that was being released. But yeah, I did that, and then a month later, I went back to Rythmia for a second time and drank more ayahuasca. And then that was when I was like, okay, I'm totally ready to like let go of everything that I'm holding on to. I like don't want it anymore, you know?
And then how was that? Was that really
it was
intense?
Really intense. Yeah, it was very, very, very intense. Yeah, and the first night was you know, time seems like a blur, but the first night I think I had like 1 cup, and I was in a really deep process. And then the following nights, I had a really big release. It was just I used to be like in a really abusive relationship, like sexually, physically, emotionally. So like all this stuff was coming through, and I had to face it. And it was honestly a lot of emotions were coming up as well. But, you know, from my experience from the first time, you know, I was like, this is my second time here. I'm going to do it this time, no matter what the experience is. And now looking back on it, I don't really believe that there is like a bad experience. It's just whatever that.
Okay, so that's what I was just about to ask you. Like, for people who haven't done ayahuasca or maybe even any psychedelic, they're like, oh, what about a bad trip? And I'm going to ask you, like, have you ever had a bad trip or not? Uh-huh. And, like, what was that like?
Yeah, I would say that I don't believe that in like having a bad trip. Maybe if you asked me before I even did plant medicine, but I really believe that like whatever we're experiencing is just coming out of us. So we have to not necessarily relive those moments, but sometimes we have to feel those emotions so that they can be released and they can come out. And yeah, there's been many ceremonies, you know, where it was super uncomfortable. And, you know, my ego was screaming at me, like, why are you doing this? Like, it's not good for you, or, you know, you don't need to drink anymore. But, yeah, I think it's just part of the process. I think that whatever we have, that it's inside of us, whether it's a memory or trauma or experience. And, yeah, it will be uncomfortable, but when you surrender and you release that in a form of a purge, and it could be a purge is not necessarily just like vomiting, it could be a release of emotion, crying, laughing, shaking, shivering. You feel so good after, but really, in the moment, it might seem like a bad trip, but really it's, I think it's just like whatever is already inside of us. Because, you know, a lot of times people say, oh, like when the medicine, it's making me sick, I feel nauseous, whether it's drinking ayahuasca or, you know, boga or wachuma or kambo. But really, we're already sick. Like we're already sick, and the medicine is cleansing us. It's clearing out our body, our mind, our spiritual body, so that we can get to that place of like wholeness again, and we can reconnect with ourselves. So yeah, going back, I don't really believe in like a bad trip. It may seem quote unquote bad in the moment because it's uncomfortable. But it's just whatever needs to come up to be released.
Have you ever had a trip where you like felt completely out of control and thought you were never gonna come back?
Oh yeah. I think I really am like, oh yeah.
Yeah, I feel like you have to when you're in like plant medicine. You're like, I'm never coming back to Earth. I'm gone forever.
Yeah, I would say I've definitely had 4 major ego deaths, 3 of them being with ayahuasca and 1 of them being with mushrooms. But yeah, I've definitely had a major ego death where my major lesson was about letting go and releasing the fear. And I really believe that like the whole lesson was like, you know, our souls are eternal and you don't have like to get over the idea of death and stuff. But there's definitely been moments in that process when it was happening and that experience where I had to say, like, I've had visions and had to say goodbye to my mom, my dad, my boyfriend, and I really felt like, okay, this is it. They're gonna bury me here after ceremony. I'm not coming back. In the moment that I had a change in perspective and said, you know what, I'm in complete trust, and if I'm gonna die in ceremony, this is the best place because everyone knows that my soul is just gonna transcend and go back with God. But yeah, it's very kind of strange to say out loud because it's so abstract, but in those moments of that were very intense that I've had with those ego deaths, I've definitely felt like, okay, this is it. I'm not coming back. But the moment that I had that change in perspective, it's like the medicine gives you back everything and says, okay, now I'm going to let you be and show you that you're not actually dying. This is just remembering for you that you don't have to fear anything.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I've never had an ego death, like, entirely. And I think part of that is just because I'm so scared that I think I'm, like, gripping on. And I think that, like, Mother Ayahuasca is just, like, I don't feel like I could handle it, like, not right now. And I wonder if Mother Ayahuasca, like, knows that because I've never had anything like that. But when I did Bufo, this is kind of a trigger warning, but one of the big reasons why I did Bufo was because I was suicidal. And the shaman who I did it with literally made me write a contract that I wasn't going to kill myself up to 12 months after smoking Bufo with him, no matter what happened. Because he said that because I was suicidal and choosing to do Bufo, which, like, literally forces you into having an ego death, he was like, I'm making you write this contract because what he said, what he thinks could possibly happen is, like, I could have an ego death and like it and then want to actually myself.
Yeah.
So I had to, like, write out a formal thing that if I did, he wasn't liable. That was really intense. But when I did What I did do from Bufo, that's not what happened at all, actually. What happened with Bufo is I was so scared to smoke it because I knew I was going to be forced into an ego death, even though I didn't actually have one. I mean,
Bufo is intense.
It was intense in a different way.
Yeah.
And smoking Bufo like 2 or 3 times actually made me realize I didn't want to kill myself. Which was actually great because I was like, if I could have an ego death which lasts like 15 minutes and I'm scared to just do that and I know I'll come back and be okay, I realized is like I didn't actually like want to finalize death for myself. And that alone was like extremely therapeutic, like to this day. When I suffer, like sometimes I'm really open on YouTube that like sometimes I do still suffer from like suicidal ideation a little bit. But from that experience of Bufo, I'm like, these are just thoughts. It's not like I really want to die. And so that alone was like completely worth it to me, honestly.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I feel like Bufo is very different than ayahuasca too. It's like, for me at least, as soon as I exhale, it go like gone. Like you don't have a choice. You are surrendering in that moment. Sometimes, and everyone has a different experience, But I also feel like all the medicines are so divine and so intelligent. It gives you exactly what you need and not what you want. So like even going back to like what you're saying, like maybe Mother Ayahuasca, maybe she knows. I think like it will give you the rememberings and the teachings when you're ready for whatever is going on in your life. I even had a very similar experience, like in my last ayahuasca experience about a few months ago with the Yawanawa. I felt like ayahuasca wanted to show me something, but I wasn't ready to receive that message yet or to see what, So it always gives you what you need. But yeah, and what was I going to say? Yeah, the medicines are beautiful because it just really allows you to come back to yourself and separate like your thoughts and your emotions and really come back to your heart and to your heart center, because our soul knows what we want. So sometimes we just form an ego from growing up or from experiences in life, and you just learn to be more aware and conscious of these thoughts and things that you happen, and it tends to permeate and stay with you after your experience for sometimes the rest of your life, which is really beautiful.
Okay, so then you went to go work at Rythmia. And how long did you work at Rythmia for?
I was at Rythmia from March to July 11th, which is like really significant for me because it was like my last day was right before my birthday. But I was there for a couple months and it was a great experience. I learned a lot about myself. I think it gave me the opportunity to not only do a lot of my own healing that I was needed to work through, but just to be in service and really kind of opened my eyes to like what I wanted to do in life with like natural healing. So it was like I learned a lot, to be honest.
Do you have like any stories of anyone who was at Rythmia? So Rythmia is a week-long experience and you do 4 ayahuasca ceremonies in that whole week. And did you meet anyone where they came in on that like Saturday or Sunday when they check in and then they left the next weekend and they were like totally different energy?
Oh yeah, totally. They have a lot of guests coming through there, sometimes an average of 80 people, and it's a lot. So but definitely it was really beautiful for me because I worked at intake, which welcoming guests, and so I got to see the transformation from the beginning to the end. And even they have breathwork ceremonies, which is really nice too, and you see a lot of people having visions sometimes, which is really crazy because you think, oh my gosh, how can I have that experience just by breathing? But no, for sure, there have been many people I've seen and we're seeing big transformation, whether there have been stories of people who've had a loss in hearing in one ear and come out of ceremony and had their hearing again, and just people leaving more confident with themselves. And I mean, even for myself, releasing this like very abusive relationship that I was in. I remember literally on Yahe night, because on the last night they do Yahe, and
I
remember I was like purging on the toilet from the front and the end, and as soon as I got up, I knew instinctively that I had like left my ex-boyfriend in the toilet, and I literally felt reborn. And when I came back to my bed, I felt, I was like feeling my skin. I was like, oh my God, I feel like a new baby, and just felt so much lighter. And you can just feel people when they finish at the end of their week, that just feel like light.
Yeah, that's interesting you say you were like touching yourself, because going back to Bufo, didn't mean to make this whole conversation more about, like, we're talking about Bufo and ayahuasca.
Yeah,
but
that's okay.
I remember the first time after I smoked Bufo, and I was terrified, and I was like coming out of it, and I was lying down on this mattress. My eyes were still closed because I was still pretty like really disoriented, but I was just touching my face, like touching my nose, touching everything on my face, touching my neck. And it almost was like I was touching my face for the first time, which was so interesting. And I was having this like moment of like, oh my God, I have a face.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a person. Sounds really like, like you're like, yeah, Mckenna, you're a person. But like when you, I don't know, it's just like a whole nother experience when, how do I describe it? It's just like the beauty of realizing you're a human. Like, you have a physical body, and like you have skin to feel things with, and it was really interesting.
No, totally. I totally resonated. And it's really, you know, as we talk about these things, it's maybe sound very like abstract and weird, because like the both of us could never put our experience into words, but I totally resonate with what you're saying, because I also feel like, you know, we hold on to these layers, these things that we accumulate in our life, and they're like layers. So when you release them after ceremony, you literally like shedding skin, and you're like, wow, I actually have like, I can, you know, you just, I don't know how to put it into words, but it's like, it's like you've taken off layers that you've had for so long, and it's like kind of numbed yourself, and now you have the senses again, and it's literally like, you know, just coming back home to yourself. You're reconnecting with your inner child, with your true and pure essence of yourself, like as when you were born. And I think that's the essence of like why most people take plant medicine, is to like reconnect with themselves, and a lot of, you know, that's why we hear a lot of people feeling like they've been reborn, because it kind of is like it's kind of what it is, like, wow. Yeah.
So I feel like one of the first things at Rythmia, when you go to Rythmia, they have different, I don't know what you would say, like mantras when you're supposed to go into ceremony.
Oh, like the different intentions?
Like fuse me, the intentions, like fuse me with my soul.
Yeah, I don't really remember.
Heal my heart. Yep. So that's like, there's 2 more.
Yeah, I think there's 3. I don't remember all of them, but...
And do you feel like most people, when they go to Rythmia, they experience that? Like, that's really like the main experience, is reconnecting with your inner higher self.
Yeah.
And fusing your soul back together, healing your heart. Like, is that, do you think, what most people experience when they're there?
It's hard to say, but I would say that, yeah, a lot of people get a lot out of it. And I think for overall in general in plant medicine, that is the overall intention. But I think it's important, no matter where you go or what medicine that you drink, that, and even in life, when you speak, you write, or you walk, that you do it with an intention and with a purpose. And I think everyone has a different intention. So I think it's great that they have intentions, but necessarily those intentions might not work for everyone. And I think that's really why, before anyone goes to drink plant medicine, is to sit with yourself and really ask the question of, why am I doing this? What is my intention, and what is my purpose of receiving this medicine? Because my intention might be completely different than your intention, and what may work for me might not work for you. So I think it's such a personal thing, and that it's going to be different for everyone. But I think the overall goal is to merge back with your soul and come back with yourself. And that's why, you know, even if you go to the Amazon or wherever to drink medicine or receive medicine, that is the overarching goal. But how you get there might be a different journey, and that intention may look different for everyone.
feel like Rythmia always talks about receiving your miracle. Like, you go to get a miracle. Like that's like the whole marketing thing.
Yeah.
So do you feel like you genuinely saw people receive a miracle, whether they went for like addiction or like mental health or physical health or something where they're like, this literally changed my life this week?
Yeah, no,
it's completely different.
Yeah, I've definitely seen people leave and like their lives like change, and I can even speak on a personal level, like, you know, it changed my whole family's life and perspective and our whole dynamic of our family. But honestly, I believe that every day is a miracle. I don't believe that you can really sell a miracle because, you know, waking up and taking another breath, even now, every second is a miracle. Everything is it's a gift. And so, but there are, you know, there are beautiful things that people have received and come out from that experience of being there. For sure, people have left with their lives being changed. But, you know, I think that it's just the having that change and shift in perspective is a miracle. And even saying that is sounds a bit weird, because like I just said that I really believe that waking up every day, taking a next step and is a miracle. Everything is having the air in our lungs. So, you know, it's really kind of what is a miracle, what is not a miracle, you know. I think it's also so personal, like it's very, but beautiful things through plant medicine in general have like happened. And
can you be specific?
Yeah, even with like Kambo, for example, you know, it's like another type of medicine, not necessarily, it doesn't come from a plant, it comes from a frog in the Amazon, and it's not so much a psychedelic, but it's a purgative. And, you know, there have been people who have had cancer, for example, and are able to like release that without like chemotherapy. And so, what else? Yeah, there's just, and even generational trauma, you know, that's something, for example, that I've been working on with my last ayahuasca ceremonies with the Yawanawa, who are a Brazilian tribe. And it's really just releasing like these deep ingrained behaviors that have been passed down. For example, you know, it could be shame or feelings of not good enough or fear, whatever it may be. So yeah, those are just like a few examples. And
well, I think that's what makes plant medicine like ayahuasca and even shrooms so amazing, is because people are starting to talk more and more about intergenerational trauma and how much that affects mental health or physical health.
Yeah.
For me, I'm starting to realize how much intergenerational trauma has affected my mental health issues, and how much I'm starting to really realize like a lot of it isn't me. Like a lot of it is from previous generations. And because we, like in talk therapy, that's discussed, like intergenerational trauma is discussed, but I feel like plant medicine is like the direct route of healing it that no other like form of healing or modality could really do. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, for sure. And like, you know, epigenetics is a real thing. Like our body stores these traumas in our cells and gets passed down from generation to generation. And you know, it's one of my last ceremonies, I had like hundreds of ancestors come to me from my father's side, like with the woman in my family, working on all this generational trauma of like abuse and stuff, and that was being released through me, so then I don't have to carry that. Because whether we realize it or not, we all carry trauma, whether it's something very small as something being yelled at, or from, I don't know, abuse, or to the other extreme, but we all carry something, and sometimes we don't realize it. And exactly what you said, sometimes it's not me, and sometimes we wonder like, why do we feel so anxious, or why do I have these feelings, especially sometimes when we've grown up in an environment where we've grown up in a very loving environment, didn't experience that. And so yeah, plant medicine is for sure, I believe, the thing that I found goes directly to the source and allows you to see it and, you know, release it, because they're like you just said, like you can go to talk therapy and stuff, but that's great, but there's some things that are really ingrained in our being and like in our subconscious that just necessarily talking can't really get down to what plant medicine can, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Because I feel like plant medicine is like, I mean, this is, I don't want to feel like I'm not undermining it or diminishing it, but I feel like plant medicine's like talk therapy, somatic therapy, breath work, like all these healing modalities in one. Like it's so intense and it's all compounded. It's on the physical, molecular level, cellular level, spiritual level, emotional level. And I think that's why ayahuasca is starting to blow up when it comes to mental health, especially because it's kind of just like a one-shot thing for physical, mental, spiritual, emotional well-being.
Yeah,
which is amazing.
Yeah, no, for sure. And also, like, you know, like what I said earlier, like the first time I ever took ayahuasca, I talked to my soul. And like, you know, no one knows you better than yourself. And so I could talk to, for example, if I wanted to go to therapy with a therapist, I could talk to them. But really, when you do plant medicine, like when you're talking to yourself and your soul, no one knows you better than yourself. So I feel that's why plant medicine is such an amazing tool to use for even therapy or whatever you want to get out of it, because no one knows you better than yourself. You can talk to someone all day long, but like no one's really going to truly know the essence of you but you.
So talk about a little bit about being a facilitator. How was that? Because you're seeing people experience the medicine instead of being like the receiver. I mean, you drink medicine, I know, while you're helping.
Yeah.
But what was it like helping people through the ayahuasca experience?
It was really interesting. I think when you're sitting on the other end of it, being a facilitator and holding space, you develop a different type of relationship with the medicine. But for even, I would just say, just holding space in general, because now that I've left being a facilitator for ayahuasca and I'm a Kambo practitioner, like one of the most important things that I was taught was especially that you are not there to heal anyone. You're there to hold space and be a clear channel so that the medicine can work through you. We don't heal anyone. And I think that's really important nowadays, because a lot of things, even on social media and things are popping up of like, people calling themselves shamans. And, for example, I would never be a shaman. I'm just someone who's here as like a practitioner, here to be in service and to hold space so other people can go through their own healing and their own journey. And I feel that's important to recognize, because when you step out of that role of you're not healing someone, you give the power back to that person give them the inner strength that they have the responsibility too of doing their own healing. But yeah, it's really interesting being a facilitator, even with ayahuasca. And I would just say, like, in general, even for Kambo, like, just really being more of an observer and a witness, and really giving that own individual their own space to go through whatever process that they're going through. Because what may look like that's going on the outside is not necessarily what's going on in the inside. So, it's really important to try not to, like, for example, touch and, really get involved in their process, because you don't know necessarily what they're experiencing. You don't want to inhibit them or, be a distraction or, interrupt their process. So really just, being, for example, when I was there, just to really be there, and if someone, mostly let people come to you if they need help or they want to ask you something, but really just, let's say, just to be there and hold space in the container. I say that was like what I believe is like, the role of a facilitator, whether it's with any medicine, not trying to like interrupt someone's process, because they are releasing things. And also just being in your own mind and being conscious of your own energy, because when you are on these medicines, your energy field is very open. And even when you're not on plant medicine, we absorb energies, and because everything is energy, we absorb and pick up things from other people. So just, being in your own energy and being centered while other people are releasing things, but being mindful that, that there are things, and just keeping your energy clean in general.
Yeah.
But I would say it was very interesting seeing people go through their own process, but just being mindful and aware that, what is going on the outside, even if someone looks like they're having like a crazy experience, not to be like, oh my God, they need help.
And then I was thinking of that because there's so many times I've been to ceremonies, ayahuasca, Bufo, anything, and the facilitators are always like, I've heard stories of where people are like screaming, like scary, like screaming, freaking out. But then the next day or a few hours later, they'll be like, how was that? And they're like, that was the best thing of my entire life. And it sounded like they were not okay.
Yeah.
But I did hear one story, it was probably at Rythmia or something, where someone was screaming and like kind of scaring everyone else because it was so intense. They had to take them outside and they were screaming. And then the next day everyone was like, are you okay? And I guess the woman was like, that literally is the best thing that's ever happened to me, because I worked through something really heavy and really dark, and it was really hard and horrible, but I feel like it's gone now.
Yeah, and for sure. Sometimes, we have these things stored in us, and it's just a form of purging. And sometimes the release can be very crazy and abstract, or it can be like very subtle, but that's just like part. And of course, the job of facilitators is to make sure that holding a safe container, the person's not gonna like hurt themselves, and there's times where it's appropriate to step in and when not to. But yeah, it's exactly, there have been times when people are just like having a very big release, and it seems scary, but then like the next day they might be having a conversation with God, or releasing something big. And so yeah, it just looks different to everyone. But yeah, those things definitely do happen. And it doesn't mean that will happen to everyone, And it's really important, some people, like what we were talking about earlier, is having a bad trip or a bad experience. Anytime you receive any medicine, whether it's mushrooms, iboga, bufo, kambo, you'll never have the same type of experience. Every time can look completely different. And I feel like that's just a way of life. We're never gonna have the same moment.
Thing.
Yeah,
exactly.
so it's the same thing with plant medicine. Yeah. So it's just good to have that perspective, even if you feel like you had a really tough ceremony with any of these medicines, to go in with an open mind that, yes, I may have had that experience, but it's released and it's gone. So it doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna have the same experience. And I can just only speak from my own experience. I've never had the same experience, and that goes for,
I don't think anyone has.
Yeah, so,
I've never heard of anyone saying I had the same experience. It's different every single time. And I think that for me kind of adds to the fear, like when I go in, because it's just, I have absolutely no idea what I'm gonna get.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Am I gonna like go talk to God and like have a really beautiful kind of easier experience, or am I gonna like get ripped apart by Mother Ayahuasca, and you don't know?
Yeah, you just never know, because like our souls are infinite, and it's kind of like we're like an onion. You go to ceremony, you peel off one layer after another, and so you never know what will give you, but it's always what you need and not what you want. But it can be that fear, because we've just been so ingrained with that in society to fear the unknown. But going back to what I was saying earlier, it's all about trusting yourself, trusting the medicine. And I think it makes it easier when, I think setting is so important, and this is something I've learned from my own experience too, is really knowing where you're going to receive medicine, with who you're receiving medicine, what medicine are you receiving, why, the intention, and not only knowing where and who you're receiving, but what is their experience, where was the medicine grown, what was their training behind the medicine, because that all plays a role into the experience that you will have as well, to some degree. And when you know that, I think it makes trusting and surrendering easier, because when you know you're in a safe environment, it makes you allowed to put those walls of vulnerability down and be like, okay, even though I may have this fear, I can trust in knowing that I'm held in a safe space, that I can fully release and be okay with whatever is going to come up,
Okay, so the last time I saw you was a few months ago, and you told me you went to Spirit Quest in Peru, and I want to hear about that.
Yeah,
because that's a whole different experience than Rythmia.
Yeah, it was completely different. I went last year. I went to the Amazon to this retreat center called Spirit Quest in Iquitos. They're off the Amazon River. It's a beautiful center. And I went there to receive the medicine of Wachuma, which most people may know it as San Pedro. So the grandfather spirit comes from a cactus, and it's a real heart opener, and it's very grounding medicine. I think at that time in my life, because I was drinking so much ayahuasca, it was what I needed, and that I needed just to get clarity on my life and where I was and everything going on. But it was an amazing experience. It was very more authentic and also different in a sense. It's just a completely different medicine, but also that so we did 3 ceremonies. It was a week-long retreat. Every other day we did a ceremony. So in total we did 3 ceremonies. And for 2 of the ceremonies we went out into the jungle and we sat with indigenous tribes and literally just learned to be in. For anyone that doesn't know what Wachuma is, it's the closest thing I can compare it to is mushrooms, but way more intense. And the reason I say somewhat similar but not similar to mushrooms is the sense that when you receive this medicine, you can like still go out and walk and you can talk but you'll feel like you won't want to talk. You're doing a lot of like internalization, but it was a beautiful experience, and it really touched my heart. And in one of those experiences we took a hike up into the Amazon for about like an hour, and to go meet
while you were on the medicine.
Yeah, while we were on the medicine, and it was crazy because we took a boat ride first, maybe like a 30-minute. I can't remember how long the boat ride, but it was around 30 minutes, and then we walked through this this little town at the end of basically the base of the forest, or where we were about to walk into, and
how many people were there with you?
My group was pretty small. It was very intimate, which I really enjoyed. And I think there was about 6 people in my group.
Well, I feel like that alone, like to paint a picture of Rythmia is corporate. I'm gonna say it's very like corporate, and you said average like 80 people in ceremony.
Yeah,
it's huge, and you're at like a resort like feeling, and this is like you're in the Amazon in Peru with 6 people on a mountain. So it's like very authentic.
And the retreat center is really beautiful too, because they have a maloka for every type of medicine. So they have a maloka just for their ayahuasca ceremonies, and they have their whole altar set up, and then they have a maloka for Wachuma, and they have like a whole different altar set up. And so it's a completely different experience. But we went hiking up on the second ceremony. We received medicine at their maloka and did an opening prayer and blessing, and then we had the opportunity to change out of our ceremonial clothes if we wanted to or not. And then we basically spent the day where we went with this tribe, and the whole lesson was, my first ceremony, the lesson was just to learn how to be in nature and be with yourself. And I was like, wow, when we sat with this first indigenous tribe, I was like, wow, if everyone could just come here and experience this, life would be so different. But the second ceremony that we did, when I talked about hiking into the jungle, I literally went barefoot and had mud past my ankles, and it was a big reality check just for where I was in my life and where I was and what I was doing. And but this tribe really touched my heart, and we went swimming in the Amazon River with them, and I definitely say I left my heart there, and I had that feeling this is the first of many walks back there. But I think it was just a completely different experience, and I think
like
that's
heart opening,
like
a heart-centered experience. It sounds like, which is so magical.
And I feel like also Wachuma in general is just a heart opener as well. So that made
double whammy.
Yeah, double whammy. But it's a very different experience when you receive medicine in the home and in the jungle from where it came from, and then receiving it somewhere where it's not naturally from. And it's just like being in that environment in general. You're surrounded with the jungle and the energy and the
I feel
spirit.
like we could go off into like a whole nother conversation about that.
Oh yeah, totally.
Because maybe we will one day, but you know, like since ayahuasca is getting more and more westernized now, even here in Costa Rica, like even with Rythmia and other retreats, and I know that there's, you know, illegal ceremonies in the United States with ayahuasca. And on one hand, I think that's amazing that people are more open to the experience and are experiencing it. But I also really worry about the westernization mainstream of the medicine, because part of the medicine being so powerful is how it's so ancient and ancestral.
For sure. And that's like one thing I really appreciated about Spirit Quest is I think there's this really interesting like PDF. I'll send it to you and you can share with your followers. It's called the Ayahuasca Manifesto, but it talks about how someone basically channeled and wrote a document on the perspective of ayahuasca and how she's starting to come down from the jungle, because basically our Western society is very sick and that we need this medicine, but how that she's evolving and how she's starting to work in our Western culture. But from my experience, and these are just my own personal beliefs, I think that having some baseline and foundation of tradition is important, because like you just mentioned, these medicines are ancient and they've been used for thousands of years. And if you go back and you look at a real shaman, that they eat, sleep, and breathe shamanism. They are born into that. And it's actually really interesting because they are the medicine man or woman of their tribe and their village, and they don't even appoint themselves as a shaman. They are appointed by their community as a shaman. And so
this is like, okay, we could go on so many different conversations and be here literally all day, because I've been meaning to also make a video and talk about how I think it's a huge problem and honestly red flag when people call themselves healers, like what we were saying earlier, or shamans, especially when you're white.
Yeah, I think
that's like, I was going to give people advice of like what the red flags are to look out if you're going to do a really intense like psychedelic journey. I honestly, like, if it's someone who isn't an indigenous person calling themselves a shaman or a healer, to me that's like a huge questionable thing.
Yeah, no, it's totally understandable, because it's just like what I just mentioned, like shamans, it's their way of life. And a lot of these shamans are studying from when they're like 16 years old, and so they go and they do dietas and they study with specific plants and tree barks, and they learn the icaros, which actually is really interesting because the icaros are the chants, and that's really what they believe that facilitate the healing. And so those are the prayers and that they've learned from the jungle. And so, you know, it's really just about finding about being in a container where, you know, people can hold that space, because not everyone is a shaman. Sorry, not everyone is a shaman, and that's just the reality of what it is. I mean, there's a lot of stuff coming up and people saying that's what I was saying earlier, but I feel I resonate with what you're saying, and I feel like, you know, now when I would like to receive medicine, I want to go and sit with an indigenous shaman that knows how to hold that space, because some of these people are coming with severe and deep trauma, and not everyone can hold space for that, and not everyone has the experience to. So yeah, I just feel like going back to it, it's important to have some baseline of tradition, because these things are so ancient. We are just now learning about them less than 50 years ago. So we're just like on the tip of the iceberg. And so I think, you know, sometimes drinking more medicine can actually do harm then, you know, so just...
A lot of people don't talk about that, actually.
Yeah.
But that's actually been brought up in my personal life, like very vaguely, of people who do a lot of medicine, and then the effects of that aren't known either. And when I mean a lot, I mean like a lot. Like dozens and dozens, hundreds of ceremonies, you know.
You know, for sure. I think it all goes back to integration, because I believe that going to drink medicine in any type of ceremony, whether it's ayahuasca, bufo, or Kambo, that is like going to school. It brings up the teachings and the rememberings for you to take home and apply as homework, and that's your personal choice of how you want to integrate that in your life. But a lot of these medicines and the effects stay with you for a very long time after. So, and I think that's something that a lot of people don't talk about, is like integration. And you know, some people can get like a fix of like, oh, just using it as like a crutch. Oh, whenever I have a problem, I'm gonna go drink ayahuasca. But going back to also intention of why are you wanting to receive any medicine? Is it because you're trying to escape something, or is it because you really want to face something, or whatever it may be? But the why is important. And you know, just going back to even sitting with it's amazing. I mean, I've had friends and I've known people that have gone out to the Amazon and received medicine with like indigenous shamans, and they will literally have like an hour or more consultation with you and specifically tell you like, okay, maybe you don't need ayahuasca, maybe you need to diet this specific tree bark or this plant or this flower for whatever may going on with you. And that is the beauty of it, because these people eat, live, and sleep shamanism. They have a wealth of knowledge that we as Westerners are just getting on the tip of the iceberg of. And you know, you see a lot of centers and things popping up even around the world, and even with ayahuasca, and you go to a ceremony and people calling them shamans, but they don't even know, and the Icaros, the chants that you learn from the plant, and the only way you know that is when you go and study with the plants. And so that just comes from lifetimes of experience as well. And so yeah, I resonate a lot with what you're saying. We could talk forever about this.
We could literally talk about, I feel like, so many different avenues of plant medicine. It brings up so many different topics of conversation. And the Spirit Quest place like sounded really interesting to me, because I'll just briefly mention that you said Rythmia and a lot of retreats should do some sort of vetting process, whether it's like mental health or physical health, like so it's safe. But you were telling me that Spirit Quest like sent you like a 20-page like form where you had to go into detail of like who you were, and what you wanted.
Yeah, I don't think it was 20 pages. I think it was like 7 pages. It was pretty long though. It was like around a 7-page application. She had me she asked me like all the health questions, which I think Rythmia does ask. They do vet you before you come, but the vetting process at Spirit Quest was way more intense. And she really asked me, what is your intention with coming to drink medicine, and what is your why, and what is your experience? And it was really more on a personal level. And I think because they hold smaller and more intimate ceremonies, it allowed for that. And at Spirit Quest are very particular about who comes out there, and because also, you know, she just wants to make sure that you're going there with the right intention of healing and
the understanding of what could possibly happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I really loved it at Spirit Quest too, because I remember for our orientation, our opening talk, she literally did a 3-hour had a conversation about the history and about the plants and the traditions and everything. So it gave us, as people receiving it who are not accustomed to this culture, of the background, because I think it is important. You know, we're receiving something so sacred, to understand where it comes from and how it's grown, because you know, life is not all about taking; it's also about giving. And another thing, really quickly, at Spirit Quest, you can go there to receive ayahuasca, but I think it's really cool because the participants get to be an active participant in the making of the medicine. So the shamans come and you get to help brew the ayahuasca, and you get to put your own prayers and intentions into it. So it's really involved, and I think that's really beautiful. And yeah, they have
then I can only imagine you get more out of that experience because you're so involved, like on every level, and it's so intimate. Like I feel like I personally would feel like that would be a more rewarding and comforting experience than a retreat that has like dozens of people at a time.
I think
it's very different.
I've never received ayahuasca. That I can only speak from my Wachuma experience. But from what I've heard from the previous guests that were there the week before me, they had been, some of them, it was their third time or second time there. And it's because of this very personal relationship that you get with the shamans, the one-on-one time, and that the experience that you get to be involved in the making of the medicine that you're about to consume. And even on that level, on a personal level, you're developing your connection and your relationship with the medicine. It doesn't mean you have to be a facilitator to, or a person of holding space to have a relationship. Everyone has their own unique and beautiful relationships. So when you have that communion, even before, I think it builds for something really beautiful and a more understanding and appreciation of why you're going to receive the medicine, no matter what medicine it's from.
Well, I feel like we could talk forever.
Yeah.
About all our like personal experience and you working out with Rythmia and Spirit Quest, and even more like you're a Kambo facilitator. You like touched upon that, but that's a whole other conversation. Is Kambo.
Yeah, we could talk.
I was like noticing she has Kambo scars like all over her body, her arms, and her chest. I have like 3 scars. Like, you look like you have like 40. Yeah,
these are pretty intense. I probably do have around 40, to be honest. I have them on my ankles and my arms and some on my chest. But yeah, it's definitely warrior medicine. And it's kind of the scar, and they do fade. Some of them are fading away after a while, but it's also a remembering of like why I did the medicine and like the lessons I received after. So it keeps me like in check,
Yeah. And then Amber said before we started doing the interview that you were gonna do a boga.
Yeah, it's so funny because I just signed up to receive a boga in February, so.
And again, a whole nother plant medicine, I feel like it's most similar to ayahuasca, at least that's what I've heard and learned. Like, if you have to compare it, it's kind of like ayahuasca, but also extremely different.
Yeah, I've heard it's extremely different. It's also working with the different spirits. You know, the spirit of ayahuasca is like feminist. You're working more with the masculine. And it's way more direct. Yeah, and I definitely was very nervous a few years ago. And I feel like, just in general, iboga has like this very like negative connotation. But it's something that I just received the calling and I know it's time. And honestly, of course I feel nervous, but I don't feel that big overlying fear. And I think it's just like, we were talking about earlier, all the medicines, it comes to you in divine timing and when you're ready. And this is just something that I'm like, okay, it's here. And of course there's going to be a little fear coming up because I don't know what's going to be shown to me, but I just know that I need to surrender to the experience because I've already said yes to it. And whatever needs to come up is for my highest good so that it can be released.
Yes.
It's a process.
It is a process. It's like a whole spiritual process. I feel like just knowing that whatever comes up is going to come up within itself is like a spiritual practice.
Exactly. And that's just every day in life, Yes. Every day is you just go 1 second at a time.
Yeah. Well, I'll definitely want to have you back on to talk about iboga because I've never done iboga and I have so many more questions about iboga.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure I'll have a lot to tell you after my experience.
Well, thank you for coming on.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.